Yokohama Kaidashi Kikou is a manga series from the 90s, and overall it presents a really interesting and creative story, set at what can be called the end of the world. It isn't a typical end of the world story, however. There's no running or screaming or looting or death. In fact, everything is remarkably calm, peaceful, and serene. The story follows Alpha, who runs a cafe in a corner of the world rapidly becoming forgotten. She is fortunate to get 2 customers a week. She is a robot, too. Technology has really fallen apart in this world. Radios still work and streetlights still function from some unknown power source. Yet there are still robots roaming about that look exactly like humans, except for their hair colors being inherently purple or green. They do not age and do not have to run off as much food as humans do. Anyway, there's implied to have been some sort of catastrophe or event that plunged the world into disorder. Sea levels are rising every year, wiping away more and more of the coastlines, and the human population is falling with each passing year. Nations have given way to small communities, and the greatest cities left are pitiful in comparison to ours. The land is dotted with crumbling infrastructure from the past and mysterious happenings. Someone is hiding in the woods, there's flying fish, and what seems to be fungus is growing into the shapes of people. Everyone knows that things are disintegrating, and yet everything is peaceful. The end of the world is quiet. There's no fighting. Instead, things exist in a peaceful setting. People are living their lives each day, growing vegetables, building and repairing, making art, or otherwise just chilling. People's priorities are very focused on their communities, and things are running smoothly despite all that has happened. Speaking of which, it is never revealed exactly what it is that happened, though it can be inferred that it was caused by humanity. Anyway, that is the setting of this world. But what are the themes and messages of the story? The biggest themes I see is satisfaction with life and how we perceive the passage of time. The end of the world is only a backdrop to enhance these themes. I mean, essentially, think of how we define success in our world. Isn't it not to make ourselves known, to rise up the cultural ladder? Isn't our highest dreams not being known the world over, to give a contribution that won't be forgotten for generations on end? But there is no avenue to those things in this world. There aren't really any corporations left to rise within. There's no nation to lead, and communication has essentially broken down across the globe. There's nothing big to go for. What is left is a world where everyone is working for each other, and one free of the societal pressures we are aware of, for the most part. There's a sequence in this manga where a character by the name of Ayase is going on a distant trip. He enters into a dark tunnel cutting through the mountains, one he knows takes days to walk through. Inside it is completely pitch black. Eventually, after a day or so, he sees a light in the tunnel. There's a small stand inside operating at the halfway point to resupply travelers. It is very indicative of this entire manga. This sequence is just Ayase on a journey. It doesn't include any grand tribulations, even though it very well could have. When he encounters another person, it just reinvigorates them to complete the second half of the journey down the tunnel. It's just a genuinely pleasant encounter, one of many on the journey of life. So while there isn't a central conflict to the story, there is development. Most chapters of this manga are very short and just show an aspect of everyday life of these characters. In fact, you have to read pretty far into the series before you really start to pick up on things. And then, by the end, suddenly everything is different from what we've known before. The change is very relatable because it is just a story about life, even with all the fantastical elements. We get a unique view into this through the eyes of Alpha, who does not age, meaning that she witnesses the changes around her. She remains steadfast. But let's see these changes played out. One of my favorite storylines was when Alpha's cafe was destroyed in a storm. She decides that instead of immediately rebuilding it, she's going to set forth and explore the world, clearing her mind, and this goes on for months. When she does finally return to her town, she finds Oji-san to be in a slightly different state. He had experienced a few injuries while she was gone, and Takahiro, who she views as her little brother, has gone through a growth spurt and is visually different than before. I really love this manga for its subtlety, and this is definitely one of the times it is more direct with its themes. We see Alpha having to start coming to grips with the passage of time. Takahiro continues growing and soon enough decides to leave home and start a life elsewhere. This leaves an impact on Alpha as she has to continually reevaluate her place in the world. and how she fits into other people's lives. How does one change their relationship to someone else as the other matures? We see this reflected in Oji-san and the doctor as well. They are both elderly, and their mortality does weigh on their minds. We see them frequently reflect on their younger days. What is striking to me is what the doctor has to say to Oji-san towards the end of the manga. She says, "There are too many things to do. I don't think you could ever finish them all in one life, so you do what you can, at least one or two things." We see this reflected in Alpha too, as she talks to Oji-san about her trip. Even despite her journeys, even after everything she went through, she still feels like she hasn't even begun to see all that there is, and to experience all there is to experience. Because of this, she has a very optimistic outlook on life, because no matter what, every day offers up something new, even when she is at home. Alpha was given a camera by her former owner, which can only take a limited amount of photos. She finds using it to be difficult since she wants to capture every moment, leading her to actually take pictures very rarely. It reminds me of when the doctor and Oji-san reminisce about the time they took a closed road to see what it would look like one last time before the floodwaters would overtake it. There they realize just how fleeting that section of time will be, when that road will still be there. It has become covered in sand, it is now unusable, and in a small matter of time it will be underwater. At the end of the day, it is just a road like any other, and the characters must be aware of what it will probably look like. Yet they take the time to see it anyway. There are many other roads just like it, but they show up to see this one off, to look at it one last time, and then it's gone. The world has taken so much that with each new road swept away, each cliff toppled, each house crumbled, the reaction is mute for the most part. It is an expected part of life now. There is an agency to experience things as they are before they dissipate entirely. This drives Alpha, as we see when her former owner shows up again. We never actually see this person, as the chapters portray through their point of view. But I really like what Alpha has to say when asked if she wants to go with them. "There are so many things I want to do here. I still haven't seen the color on the underside of those leaves, or walked around the house counterclockwise. Every day is interesting to me right now." As the world continues to change at an ever-quickening pace, the more she clings on to it. Yet this isn't treated as an act of desperation or something that is ultimately wrong. Instead, it is shown as being her choice. The way she wants to live her life is where she is. There's a satisfaction with her life. Throughout this story, we obviously know that Alpha is a robot. The story behind the existence of the robots is unknown. They were made in living memory. In fact, the Doctor has a role in creating them. In the end, the question of whether robots are of equal standing or better than humanity is never really brought up. In fact, the two live together so well that there isn't any debate. The mortality of the humans and the immortality of the robots exist together, even though they are separate. They are both alive, just like the flying fish experiencing life. Kokone even sees the fact of herself being a robot to be just another quirk. There's this idea that it doesn't really matter how one is made, just that the trait that binds us together isn't necessarily our humanity, but the fact we are alive. Even some of Alpha's traits, like her ability to play music, are considered outside the capability of humans, but does not make her any less alive. Even Director Alpha, a different character on board a passing ship above the Earth, has a life, a point of view, and a meaning. What I like about this manga is that it emphasizes that no matter where one lives, one is not lesser, not to mention how each person lives their lives true to themselves. Alpha loves fish. She has fish iconography all over her house and cafe, and no one has much to say about it either than pointed it out. What I find interesting is that this occurs after the end of the world. A disaster occurred, and from my interpretation, I feel that this is what made people reevaluate their priorities, to be there for the little things. Bit of a tangent here. It reflects a grander notion that something catastrophic must happen to make us realize what is actually important in life, and stop being stuck in the commercialization of everything. In our world, those catastrophes are incoming. It is undeniable now that the effects of global warming are already wreaking havoc and will only get worse. I want to just say there's still time to prevent it from getting even worse, but it isn't wrong to say that we might have to plan for the worst while we still hope for the best. Not to mention, inevitably, our exploitative and for-profit power structures are only going to degrade the situation even further. But as the doctor says, don't miss what's right in front of you. That means being aware of your surroundings and building community. Solving the grandest issues is not a one-person operation, but a collective process, which means getting together with the people in your life to make that difference. Anyway, what this manga tells us is that life is fleeting, but it doesn't tell us to chase after that fleetingness. Instead, it invites us to take in life slowly and process it, to nap frequently, and to inspect every aspect of life, even if it is seemingly mundane. To understand that your position as a barista at a cafe that gets one customer a year, even in this story, there's a scene where Alpha is criticized for a completely chill lifestyle. She is confronted by her seeming lack of agency as someone who doesn't care enough. She admits that her cafe is small and slow, but it is her place in her community, an area for people to go. Even with her slow business, she is still fulfilling a purpose. Her laid-back demeanor does not mean she does not care. It is complicated, of course, but her life doesn't run so smoothly because of just being lazy. She has a support group, and she will do her best to contribute to it, even if she doesn't feel like she is giving as much as they do. But as the doctor tells her, she is happy to see Alpha. She says Alpha has done more for her for just being there, over all the things the doctor has done for Alpha. And in the end, it is Alpha's choice to stay with them. Alpha lives in the now. It won't stop the time from passing, but at least she will experience it.